Next presentation in this room is the Post Thumbnail Paradox by Cameron Jones here. Cameron is a professional web developer and DevOps engineer with over a decade of experience building, fixing, and tinkering with WordPress. He currently spends his days at the helm of Shorty Designs, a web design agency based in Victor Harbor, working with a variety of clients from startups, small businesses, and universities and marketing firms. Away from the laptop, you can often find Cameron in the sports field, at a dance class, or in the mosh pit. Everyone, give Cameron a round of applause.
Thank you, Dion. As Dion mentioned, I'm Cameron and I run Shorty Designs. We're a web design agency in Victor Harbor, which is about 100 k's south of Adelaide. So last time we had a WordCamp was 2019. Who here's been waiting 5 years for the next WordCamp? Yep, quite a few of you. I'm guessing most of you were in Sydney for the last one. Yeah, I was at Port Macquarie in 2019 and also Brisbane. I had to choose between Port Macquarie and Sydney. But can we all give a round of applause to the organisers for getting WordCamps back off the ground? It's been a while, and yeah, COVID really didn't help. So, and especially with lots of things that they're having to deal with. So, yeah, fantastic effort from them to get WordCamps back up and running. So just a quick show of hands. Who here is using some sort of classic editor experience for WordPress? Cool, just a couple people. Alrighty, who is using blocks for their content? Alrighty, a few more. Who is using full site editing? Couple people. And who's using some sort of page builder like Divi, Elementor, Beaver Builder, those sort of things? Cool, so fairly even split across the board actually. Just not many people using the classic editor, which is not a surprise. Alrighty, so last time I did a talk was in, at a WordCamp was 2019 in Port Macquarie. And someone yelled at me because they didn't know what plugins were and I was talking about plugins. So I'll start off slow this time. We're going to be talking about the post thumbnail paradox, but first, what's a post thumbnail? So this is what a post thumbnail looks like in WordPress. It's also often known as a featured image, but people like me like to call it a post thumbnail because that's what the code says. And we'll get into that a little bit later. This might look a little bit different. Like I know if you're using the block editor, the fields to set the featured image or post thumbnail look different. And if you're using a different page builder, then it might look different again. But that's more or less what it looks like when you're editing a post. And so when you select a thumbnail, so you select an image that you've uploaded to your site, this is what it looks like in the database. So there's 4 fields really. Meta ID, which you really don't have to worry about. The post ID is which post that it's uploaded to. The meta key just tells us that it is the thumbnail and not some other piece of data like, say, the price or the date or something like that. And then the meta value is what we actually care about, and that's the ID of the media item that is the thumbnail. And so if you didn't know, when you upload an image to WordPress, it is actually a type of post, which is, yeah, slightly confusing and adds all sorts of complexities, but hey, it works. And so that's what an image looks like in the posts table in the database. The room just got very bright all of a sudden. So like most of that, you don't need to worry about too much, but you can see down in the bottom there, it says post type is an attachment, which is what images and any sort of uploads in your media library are. And we can see that it is a PNG. And then there's other metadata that gets attached to it that is too much to try and jam into a slide, but that tells us where WordPress looks for the media files. So usually that will be in like WP content /uploads, but like it can also be outsourced to like CDNs and other sort of storage, like Amazon S3 is a very popular way to offload media. I just spent a couple of days offloading about 200 gigs of uploads from a WordPress site into Amazon S3 to save them some money. So yeah, usually in your WordPress install, but could be anywhere. And so this is what a post thumbnail usually looks like on the front end. So this is a local newspaper for where I live. And so we can see there's a couple different views of what where a post thumbnail is displayed. So we've got the single article view, and then we've got an archive view of all the news items, and then we even have it displayed on the search results in Google. And if you look very closely, you might see that one of those people in the photo there is standing in front of you. That is a photo of me playing cricket last week. So yeah, and now we can kind of see why it's important for the thumbnail to be stored as meta. As we looked at just before, it's just one entry in the database that says which image it is. So like in the single article view, it is a large image takes up the full content area, whereas in the archive view, it's a much smaller image, and we don't want to be loading really big images on that view when it's only going to be displayed in a small way. And so we can let WordPress or whatever the theme or template engine or whatever you're using figure out the best way to display that image. So we're only passing in the ID because then we can let the framework do the rest of the logic to figure out how it's meant to display. Okay, so that's more or less what a thumbnail is. What is a paradox? So a paradox is a statement that is self-contradictory. So one of the best known paradoxes is the Fermi paradox, which is the idea that we've only discovered life on one planet in the universe, and the universe is immeasurably massive. I mean, technically measurably, but there's many planets out there, billions, and yet there's only life in one planet that we know of. And so that forms the basis of the three-body problem, which is a popular book series and show. It was on Netflix recently. Do recommend because I quite enjoyed it. And that's based off one of the proposed resolutions of the Fermi paradox, which is that it's the dark forest theory, and that other life is hiding because all other life is violent. But obviously we can't really prove that theory, and there's many other theories to it as well. Another very popular paradox is the Rick Astley paradox, and I'll give you a second to digest that. Yes, because he will never give you up, but he will also never let you down. But if you ask him for his copy of the movie Up, he can't give it to you, therefore he lets you down. So, yes. So that is more or less what a paradox is. So I'm sure you're asking, what's a post thumbnail paradox? How does this work? So back before the Gutenberg project was a thing, it was pretty simple how to build websites. You had your content in this little WYSIWYG box, and then you had your theme, which displayed everything. The thumbnail was stored as metadata, and so we used functions like getThePostThumbnail in order to display how a thumbnail displays. There's a couple other slight variations of that function, but it's more or less the same for every single site. And then this little thing came along. This is called the cover block. And so if you're using Gutenberg, the block editor for your content, and also if you're using full site editing, you can use it in there. And this just completely changed how everything works. So when you have a cover block, and there's other image type blocks as well, but the cover block is particularly good for this example, you can do lots of really cool things with it, like you can set different colored overlays, gradient overlays, you can put text overlays, and then you can do things like change the focal points of the image. So, if you've got an image and when you upload it, the main thing you want to focus on isn't right in the middle of the image, you can change that all just in the editor. So people like me, I'm very process oriented, and so if I'm uploading a post if I'm uploading an image to a post, I'm going to open it up in Photoshop and edit it and make sure it's the right dimensions and all this sort of thing to make sure it's right by the time I upload it. But I'm not most people. And so I'm sure we've all visited a website or logged into a website and found that someone has uploaded an image that's 7,000 pixels wide and about 50 megabytes. And so people like that who aren't as tech savvy and aren't going to prepare their images in Photoshop every time they upload them, this is really good for them because then they can do all the editing they need to right as they're writing their post. So it also has, as you can probably see there's a button that says Use Featured Image. So all of a sudden, it's made it viable to use the content to put your post thumbnail in instead of just relying on code in the template. So that's pretty much what the post thumbnail paradox is it right to display your thumbnail in the template and in the layout, or do we use things like the cover block to display it in your content? Unfortunately, I hate to disappoint you, but there is no right or wrong answer here. I'm not going to be able to resolve the paradox for you because unfortunately WordPress is not super opinionated in this and lets us do it however we like. So whether you choose to display it in the template or in the content is really up to you, and it depends on a few factors like your workflow and personal preferences and that sort of thing. So I'll just go through a few examples to kind of demonstrate how we might choose which one we want to use. So, and all of these examples are completely definitely a coincidence if they bear any resemblance to anyone or any websites that are real. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So example number one is Kate's bookstore. Let's imagine that there's a lady named Kate and she runs a bookstore. Books will be a custom post type. And so obviously the cover of the book is going to be our post thumbnail. And she starts off by putting it in the content. So in this one, she's using a columns block to have the featured image on one side, and then some add to cart buttons on the other, and then you've got the title and the description of it. And this is really great because as she's building out these pages for these books, she can see exactly how it's going to look like as she's building it in the editor. If you're not really tech savvy, it's really helpful. You get a full WYSIWYG experience, and yeah, makes things really simple. Except then she looks at her website on a mobile phone, and that cover is at the top of the screen, takes up more than the whole fold, and people are just seeing like half of a book cover when they open up the page, and that's not really a great experience. So she decides that she wants to move it down below the description of the book. Only problem with this is she has 500 different titles listed in her bookstore. So now she has to go and edit the post for every single one of those, which is a massive waste of time. So for this example, it might be better for it to be in the template rather than in the content, because it's going to be the same across all of them. A cover for a book is going to be the same ratio for every single book, more or less. Exceptions are very rare. And so, there's no real need to change anything on a case-by-case basis. So in this example, it's probably best to have it in the layout just because it will be more consistent across the site, and if she wants to update things, it makes it a lot easier. Now we're going to have a look at a second example. And so this one is a definitely fake local newspaper. And I'm definitely not reusing an image that we saw earlier. So the post thumbnail for this one is, styled a bit more, and we've got an overlay with like the title and the date and maybe some other metadata in there. And this is really great, except when you're dealing with photos, it's a lot more complex. So with photos, you can have different colors that are contrasting badly with the overlay, and you might not be able to see what's in the photo properly. You might not be able to read the text properly, and the text might be covering up really important parts of the image that you don't want it to. So in this example, it's been put in the layout, which is great for the editors because they can just focus on what the content is. But when we have issues with the image, then they can't really change anything on a case-by-case basis. So in this instance, it might be better for it to be in the content. So here we see that we want the focal point of the image to be on the most important person in the image, which would be me. And if it's in the layout, we can't do that. We can't change the focal point or the scale of the image if it's in the layout, because then it's it's just fixed across all the different posts. So if we put it in the content in this instance, then we're able to do it. And if we have certain types of images, we could even change the color of the overlay or the text to make it stand out and more legible. And this is not just like a style thing, it's also an accessibility thing. Like if people can't read it properly, then you're opening yourself up to potential legal problems. So yeah, in this instance, it might be better for them to put it in the content rather than in the layout. So where to from here? So yeah, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, there's no satisfactory resolution to it. It really depends on like what your workflow is, what your personal preferences are, how technical you are, that sort of thing. But what I am aiming to do here is help you make an informed decision as to what path you go down. So let's have a look at just some of the pros and cons from what we've looked at. So when it comes to putting the thumbnail in the layout, some of the benefits are that it's consistent across all posts. And you can change the layout of your posts all at once because it's in the template. The template's displaying everything. It's not reliant on having to update individual posts for everything. Makes it really easy to make updates across the board to your layout. And yeah, you don't have to create it for every post, so it saves you a lot of time when you're writing. But the cons are, you can't change the individual posts as needed. We can't change the focal point of the image. We can't change the scale of the image. We can't change what the overlay color is, all that sort of thing. And you also can't see how it looks like as you're writing in the editor. I think you can if you're using a full site editing theme. You can click a button to show how it looks like in the full site. But if you're using a classic or a hybrid theme, then you can't. And then for content, it's pretty much the opposite. So you can make adjustments to individual posts as you need to. If you use content templates, you can save a lot of time. So they are a pre-built placeholder text, which, yeah, you click new post and it just pre-fills how the layout's meant to look, and you can lock it down to a certain extent. I did a talk on that at the Page Builder Summit 6.0 if you want to keep an eye out for that. And you get a WYSIWYG experience when you're writing your post. You can see more or less exactly how it's going to look on the screen. And then the cons are, yeah, changes to layout need to be made to every post individually. So if you decide that you want to redesign things at some point, then you're going to be having to do a lot of manual updating of every single post. And if you have lots of different people working on your site, they might have their own way of doing things. They might not follow your processes properly, and so it may look inconsistent across your site as different people are uploading things, or have different standards and different processes, that sort of thing. So more or less, do what works for you. Again, there's no satisfactory resolution to this paradox, but what I'm hoping to do is give you advice and help you have a full understanding of what these sort of issues are, so that you can make the decision that works best for you. Yeah, thanks. I'm Cameron. I run an agency called Shorty Designs where we build custom websites, and I also have a WordPress plugin store called Mongoose Marketplace. Thank you.
Round of applause.
That was quick.
So, a quick show of hands here. Who thought that post thumbnails and featured images were the same thing? Who's never heard of either of those names? Cool. Does anyone here have any questions for Cam? We got one. Any others? Cool.
I'll take that as meaning I did a good job.
You definitely did a good job.
Maybe this is a curveball. So you touched briefly on classic themes, blocks, and then FSE. Have you spent much time optimizing source set and sizes across, I guess, the two or three different contexts? And how have you found success in the FSE and Gutenberg context?
Okay, so I don't use full site editing. It doesn't work with my workflows, so I just don't use it. Yeah, because everything I do is continuous integration. It's all through Git, and FSE is not really great with that, so I just don't use it. As to source sets, yeah, I mean, WordPress out of the box handles it pretty well. The only thing is, yeah, sometimes the image sizes for the different thumbnail sizes are, not quite right or not cropped in the right area. There's a really great plugin I use called Crop Thumbnails, so that allows you to choose where it crops for different thumbnail sizes. So that's how I deal with that if I have any issues with where it's cropping it. Yeah, that's pretty much it, unless there's something more specific you had in mind.
So traditionally, the sizes attribute that's output on an image tag is not optimized for the context in which it's presented. So, you'll put an image in a sidebar, and then the sizes attribute will say, yeah, this image is 1,000 pixels wide, but really it's only 250, and then you end up loading a 3 megabyte image instead of a 30. In a classic theme, that's pretty simple to fix. In a what do you want to call it? Like a server rendered block, that's trivial to fix. In a JavaScript rendered block, it's much harder.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry to disappoint, but I haven't had too many issues there. Like, yeah, most of what I do is very heavily reliant on back-end code. So, yeah, if I have issues, it's not really hard to fix. I haven't really run into that very often at all. So, yeah, can't really give you too much advice there, sorry.
Any further questions?
Thank you for that. I was wondering if you've ever done a sort of combination of the two approaches, as in you're someone establishing a website for a client, so you might set up templates, but they're someone who's just going to start working with it. Have you ever built anything like that? I've done systems where I've used a plugin, I can't remember the name, where it pulls the image out of the content, sets it to the featured image, because I have clients who won't set the featured image. But I want to use it in the templates. I just wonder if there's other ways we can go about establishing a model to deal with your approach, or a developer's approach, my approach, and what a client's going to do thereafter, which is namely want to use the cover image.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's a tough one. And, yeah, kind of the whole inspiration for the talk really is, someone like me is, I code everything. So, I'm putting, the thumbnail calls in the templates, whereas, yeah, lots of clients, they're not tech savvy. They don't like clicking on set featured image, and they just whack it all in the content. So I haven't really had much experience or luck with any sort of hybrid approach. Like, you might have different ones for different post types, because some might be easier than others, and some, like if you're using like WooCommerce, for example, like you have to set the product image in a certain way. It's not going to work otherwise, whereas, a blog post is a bit more dynamic. So, yeah, not a lot of experience with that other than just education, really. But yeah, like I've mentioned, it's really dependent on your workflow, and not just your workflow, but the client's workflow as well. So, yeah, the whole point of this is to help people understand the pros and cons of each approach, and yeah, because there's no right or wrong answer there. So I would say just try and use whatever works for your client. Like having a function to pull out the first image. Like I've seen that around a bit, and yeah, it can be really helpful. Like I think Yoast SEO might do that if you don't set one, and so yeah, it's very common. So like it's a good solution if people aren't setting the feature image properly. Yeah, I thought there was one in the corner. Nope. I think Luke had one.
More of a comment, if you don't mind.
Hit me. Not literally.
I really like the way that you framed this as a paradox. It makes a lot of sense to me. I like the framing. I think that the full site editor has an attempt at a solution to the paradox. Not saying it's a good solution. Oh, there we go.
Luke broke it.
Did I press the mute button? Thanks.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
I'm not saying it's a good solution, and I'm definitely not saying it's easy to use or understand, but I think it might be a solution, which is something called layouts. Have you ever played with layouts?
No.
Yeah, so there's this concept in full site editing. You got your theme, you got your templates, you got your layouts, you got your patterns, you got your blocks, and you have to know what all template bars. You have to know what all this stuff is. Yeah. But there's a way with the full site editor to have like a preset starting point for a new post.
Yeah. So that's the content templates I was talking about. I think it's not in full site editing, but just in like the block editor itself.
Yeah, but you can create those in the full site editor and edit them there.
I'm learning something new every day.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as I know, if you create a new post using that layout, you still have a bit of a problem updating things later, but it might be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I haven't used full site editing a lot because, yeah, like I mentioned just before that, yeah, I write everything in code, it's all in Git, it's all continuous
I like
integrations, you know, it's all proper developer stuff. And so having, you know, the templates stored in the database just doesn't work with my processes. Yeah, like I have like experimented a bit with full site editing, and like, yeah, you can set the post thumbnails in the template and stuff like that, but you still have the same issues as if you're setting it in the code. You know, it's still a fixed thing that you can't really change for individual posts. So, I mean, I'm interested to look at what that might be, if there's, yeah, ways to change it other than, you know, just creating a new post template for everything you want to change, because that doesn't scale. But yeah, I'm interested to find out more about that.
Yeah, I just think like you can boil it all down to a pattern, right? Like when you have a pattern, you insert the pattern, and if you edit that pattern in the post, you're asked, do you want to change this everywhere where this pattern appears
sync
across
patterns,
your
yeah.
website? Or do you want to just change this for this one post?
Yeah.
And I think it could maybe work the same with whole layouts for posts.
Yeah, it definitely could. Again, I think you're still going to have issues as to, you know, if you have some that are synced and some that are not, and if you want, like, there is going to be some changes that if you want to make them, you're not going to be able to do that like globally or individually and stuff like that. Like it's messy. Like that's why it's a paradox, because yeah, there's no real way to fix this, and you know, the direction that, you know, WordPress development has gone has not really thought about like what the best way to manage this is. They've kind of just gone, oh, hey, they want the option to do this. Let's give them the option to do this. So, yeah, it's fun times in WordPress world.
No more questions?
Doesn't look like it.
I guess not. That is fine.
Cool.
Cameron, thank you so much for the presentation. You're around all weekend?
I am around all weekend, and if you want to get bingo, you can get a selfie with me. I think it's for 1, 6, 8, 9, and 10. So if you want to get bingo, come and see me and get a selfie.
Round of applause.